Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning for the New Hampshire Insurance Department Property and Casualty data call. All of the lines are muted to preserve the quality of the audio, but you can enter questions in the pop-up webinar window that should be on the side of your screen. So there's a question and a chat function. So please just feel free to enter any questions you have in there, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. And now I'm going to introduce Insurance Commissioner Roger Savini to get us started.
Great, thank you very much, Ariane. And again, I too welcome you and thank you for joining us to learn more about the Insurance Department's new data call for homeowners and private passenger automobile data. The collection of this data is going to help the department meet the needs of state legislators and consumers, and we're particularly excited about working with you to help further enhance the experience here in the state of New Hampshire. With me today, the person who's going to walk you through it is Assistant Commissioner John Elias, and he's going to give you the details of this initiative and its purpose. And with that, I'll turn it over to John.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you all for attending our webinar. First, and I think most importantly, we're very sensitive to the concerns of the industry when any data call is announced or initiated. We absolutely recognize that there are costs and time associated with putting them together. Beyond the costs, there's also concerns with how data will be used and whether or not it will be confidential. I'm sure there's other concerns that I'm not mentioning, but that is the main reason for this webinar. Unlike other data calls that I've experienced on the industry side, we did not want to announce or initiate a data call on a bulletin. We want to balance the need for more information with the concerns of providing it. We have worked on this data call for about 1.5 years. We actually held it up, almost 6 months because we did not want to be duplicative of some NHID efforts to do the same thing. Once those efforts kind of went towards a different direction, we decided to initiate this. We even considered all the data that we collect to make sure that it was all needed. And I think most of you know we decided to get rid of the annual complaint report because it does not provide any value to the department from an analysis standpoint, and we know that it's an effort for each carrier. Alternatively, this data we feel will add a lot of value to us, and we feel that it's worth the effort on the industry side. In addition to the questions you asked during the webinar, we're also providing an additional 30 days for any industry member that would like to respond in writing. We want to make sure we have gathered and discussed as much industry input as possible before moving forward with any call. So, I think the big question is, why are we doing this? And the Commissioner mentioned responses from responding to questions from legislators. We are often asked to provide information before a policy decision is made or a law is created. We are often responding to these questions based off of a handful of complaints. We want to ensure that the information we provide is accurate and thorough, and we feel that it will lead to better public policy decisions and more accurate predictors of outcomes of policy if we have a little more information about the marketplace. In addition to legislators, we also receive questions from producers, the media, governor's office, and many other interested parties who have legitimate concerns about the marketplace or at least their position in it. We'd like to detect real trends in the insurance availability and cost, conduct a more thorough market conduct analysis, analyze availability of smaller markets, and evaluate the necessity of a fair plan. For instance, I know that I've experienced a question where we're asked to determine the need or at least whether a fair plan should be considered in New Hampshire. And I'm sorry to say that, we don't have a lot of the data needed to make those kind of determinations, although we should have that kind of data because people are relying on us for that input. Finally, we would like to monitor the impact of weather claims beyond named catastrophes. We have a lot of storms through New England and particularly in New Hampshire, and we want to make sure that we're aware of what kind of damages those are causing. Now let's talk about the actual data requested. Here are some points that I feel are really important, and that you might have some questions around. So the call is being done under RSA 400A16. The call is limited to carriers writing homeowners and private passenger auto. It is limited to carriers writing greater or equal to 500 exposures per calendar year, and that would be either homeowners or auto or both. We will not ask for any personally identifiable information contained in the call. We ensure complete confidentiality of the data collected, and it will not be subject to our right to know law, and this is under the same RSA 400A16. Finally, I want to start looking at, a little bit at a high level on the data fields that, we'll be asking about. We'll be asking about exposure, car years and house years or house years, written premium, paid losses, and paid claim counts. The department is providing 30 days for written responses from anyone in the industry, and we anticipate those will be due by 1/8, which I believe is a Monday, 1/8/18. We would 1/7/18. Sorry. We would like to initiate the bulletin for the call on February 1st, 2018, and we anticipate the data would be due by 5/1/18. But we also realized through a couple of conversations we had before this call that this may be in line with some efforts around annual statements and other financial reporting. Don't know if that's helpful or hurtful, but that date is not etched in stone, and we'd really like to work with industry on the appropriate time for the annual due date. We don't anticipate, we do anticipate that, this data call would be somewhat automated in that we'd ask a lot of these questions and put together the effort on the industry side this year and produce the same report next year when it comes due, whatever that date is. And even beyond the date that it's due, so let's assume for a minute that it is 5/1/18, if any carriers are having problems meeting that date, if that were the one selected, we'd absolutely work with you to take care of that and give you kind of an extension. So that's all I have as far as the presentation. But if there's any questions that we've received during the webinar, or we do have some other folks here, including our Chief Property and Casualty Actuary, to ask any detailed questions. I think what's important is the detailed call is now going to be located on the website, which I think they'll generate most of the questions during this 30-day period. So I would ask that each of you download that and take a look at it, or pass it on to the folks that would have the effort involved on this, because we truly do want to hear all the concerns from the industry and talk through those before we initiate anything.
So this is the URL to view the specifications on the website. Pull it up here. So this is the property and casualty page on our website, which you can find over here on the left-hand navigation, and you just need to scroll down a little bit. Property and casualty data call, and open the specifications for the PDF. Okay. So at this point, we are going to open it up for questions. We'll give you a few minutes to type in your questions. So the first question is the data call limited to the admitted market? Yes. The answer?
As opposed to surplus lines carriers would not have to submit any data. So yes, it is limited to the admitted market.
Okay. Next question is, will we be notified annually that the data call is due, or are we required to check the website?
I would anticipate that we would release a bulletin each year around the beginning of February with a summary of any changes in the call from year to year. We don't anticipate that the data portion is going to change from year to year, but the survey may have additional questions going forward.
Next question, will admitted carriers with no homeowners or private passenger auto claims still be required to file a report?
If you're writing more than 500 policies, 500 exposures as defined in
in the data call, then yes, you'll still need to file the data call.
And that's not a combination of cars and homes, that's either or both. I mean, 500 has to qualify for each.
So if you're writing 500 homeowners exposures, you would need to submit the homeowner's data call. Separately, if you're writing more than 500 auto exposures, then you would need to submit the auto call, regardless of whether or not you have claim activity.
Okay. Someone is asking if the slide deck will be available for download, and yes, it will. We'll post it in the same area on the website where the specs are, and we'll also post a recording of this webinar for your reference. Next question, ISO generally collects this data for most of the industry. Is there any particular reason, I'm assuming that we're not, they need to not use their data?
Well, we don't have access to ISO data, but companies who submit their data to ISO should be able to perform some kind of an extract of that data and submit it to the insurance department.
Is this data required to be sent in annually, quarterly, or monthly?
We're relying on an annual call at this point.
Is the 500 exposures determined by the volume at any point during the year or as of year end 2017?
The data call is a calendar year data call. So the data call that's due on 5/1/18 will contain calendar year 2017 data. So the exposures would be measured based on the prior calendar year. So exposures during written during calendar year 2017.
Okay. The next question is, can you repeat the data elements that will be required to be submitted? So I'll go back to that slide, but it also might be helpful to check out
the data elements are exposure, premium, paid losses, and claim counts, but they are at a detail level that includes zip code, protection class, value, and several other fields that that you can find in the specifications that are out on our website.
Will the policy count and claim count calculations be further explained, and will an example of that calculation be available in the materials provided?
That information is already written up in the specifications that you can find on our website.
But if you don't find the answer to that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, if you don't find that the instructions are complete, then please let us know. There may be things that we haven't considered. However, we've designed this data call to be very similar to the data call that Missouri uses. So I think that you'll find the instructions very similar.
Next question, how do you want us to handle multi-viewing entities?
Underwriting entities
under one company.
Yeah, the data call is company specific, so information should be completed separately and submitted for each company individually.
But again, it's not a group, whether those underwriting companies are individual or collected under one underwriting company, if there's multiple underwriting units. Each company has to qualify for that 500 exposures on both. It's not a tally of or a compilation of the group together or the underwriting companies together.
Yeah, 500 exposures per company is the trigger for reporting.
So that might lead into this. Data collected as car years or house years, but I thought you said the 500 exposure threshold was written exposures. Can you clarify?
Exposures for homeowners are house years, so 500 house years in calendar year 2017. Exposure for auto is car years, so it would be 500 car years written in calendar year 2017. I think that you'll find, if there's any confusion about the details, I think you'll find more specific criteria contained in the data call itself.
And will these counts include new and renewal policies?
New and renewal, yep, everything. It's calendar year written.
give another minute for more questions. Is the department open to the establishment of an industry advisory group on this effort?
What does that even?
What does it mean?
I'm not sure what the intent of the advisory group is, but I think we're absolutely open to discussion on with anything or anybody about how to obviously be able to do our job better with data provided either by the industry or through an advisory group, but we have to be able to answer some of these questions.
You mentioned house years. Will this data include condo and renters?
It does include various homeowners forms, and again, I'd refer you to the specifications. You'll find that the specifications are very detailed.
Will you provide a formatted template for submitting the data?
Well, the data, we anticipate that the data will primarily be submitted in a flat file or an ASCII file, but there is a record layout included in the specifications, and so I think that if you turn the specifications over to your business analysts / actuaries, they'll see that the format is pretty clear. There's not a template because it won't be submitted in Excel format, but as I said, the record layout is shown in the specifications, and it should be pretty clear.
This question is about what file format the call will be submitted in. Is that in the
and we kind of just answered that. It can be in any kind of a flat file or data file.
I do think it's an interesting point to mention that the email, the size of the file is similar to the Missouri call, should be of the size that could be included in an email, just to give you a little bit of a feel for how big a data call this is.
Yes, when we send out and we post the PowerPoint deck, we'll include where the specs are on the website. And I can go back to that slide so you can find the URL as well. Are dwelling fire, residential fire policies included?
No. That dwelling fire is written under TOI 1.0, which is a commercial product. So I don't believe that's part of it. Nope.
This is the website where you can find the specifications. Regarding exposures, if a policy contains 2 insured vehicles, do we count the number of vehicles as 2 or 1 since they're on the same policy?
I believe that would calculate out as 2 exposures, 2 autos. 2 autos insured for 1 year would be 2 car years. So yes, that counts as 2.
Okay. Looks like that might be it for questions, but please know that we're here. Sally's available.
Yeah, I'm available. You can call me anytime. My office number and my cell phone number is included on this sheet, and please feel free to call, write, correspond with us in any way.
And this is John. I'm absolutely available for any questions. We mentioned the 30 days for written responses, but if there are any meetings necessary to have a more detailed discussion individually or with a group of folks from the industry, we'd be more than happy to do that.
We just got one more question about clarifying the dwelling fire. On page 2 of the instructions, it does show dwelling fire.
Fire is included. Okay, I may have been mistaken about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I may have been mistaken about that. Go by the specifications.
Does this include secondary homes where the insured is not domiciled in New Hampshire but have a home there?
Where the insured is not domiciled in New Hampshire but has, well, it goes to premium that's being written in the state of New Hampshire. So if you're writing business in New Hampshire, then it counts.
I think we just answered this one. If a homeowner has a secondary property location on their policy, That would also be considered two exposure account.
That would be a New Hampshire exposure, yep.
We use ISS as a stat agent. Can you get info from them?
We don't have access to get data from advisory organizations, but I think that individual companies may be able to work with data organizations that they report to provide an extract of their data. I honestly don't know what the contract between the carriers and the advisory organizations says, but if you're submitting data to them in some format, then I believe that, you know, most of the data that's submitted to rate-making organizations certainly encompasses the data that we're asking for, so there may be some opportunity for time saving there, that the department itself can't access that data.
We're getting another question about where the info regarding this call will be located. So this is the URL. If you go to nh.gov/insurance, you'll see a property and casualty link that's on the left-hand side of the page, and you'll find it on there as well. Are you open to receiving the data in Excel?
If it'll fit in Excel, then that'll be fine. Yep, absolutely. We can convert Excel to whatever kind of data we need. We expect to maintain this data in a SAS database. So any kind of data format will be acceptable to the department.
Yes, the data call applies to renters and condo business.
PC 1 through 10 protection classes.
AIS. That would be a question that I'll have to think about. Why don't you?
So the question is, we use AAIS and not ISO protection classes, so we don't have PC 1 through 10, and that's something we weren't aware of, I don't believe. So consider that.
Yeah, I'll. Why don't you send me an email, and I'd like to talk to any AAIS companies individually and try and figure out if there's some kind of a proxy, or we may be able to come up with some kind of a converter, so that we definitely want to have all of our data segmented into PC 1 through 10 classes. So I'd like to see if there's some way to convert the AAIS classifications to protection class, but right now we'll have to leave that as an open question that we'll work on.
If the exposure is on the book for less than 12 months, should it be included?
Yeah, there are instructions on how to account for policies that are on the book for less than 12 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think someone had asked that earlier.
Okay.
About the renters and condos.
Yeah. So as I said, that there are instructions on how to calculate that. If you've got a policy on the book for, say, 5 months, if it gets canceled, then that winds up to be 5/12 of a house year. It's pretty well laid out in the instructions.
If we write a policy in Massachusetts but they have a second home in New Hampshire, we would need to report that exposure is in New Hampshire.
That exposure is a New Hampshire exposure, so yes.
Is this voluntary or AIP business or both?
AIP, does anybody know what AIP is? I'm not sure what AIP business is, but we don't have a facility or any kind of residual market for homeowners. Here, we do have a residual market
Assigned risk.
for assigned risk.
Yep.
Yeah, we do have assigned risk for auto, but it's very small. Each carrier should report their direct business.
If you write a total of 500 or more policies, which is made up of both auto and homeowners, are we required to submit responses to both data calls?
The cutoff would be 500 exposures for homeowners, and you should submit the homeowner's call.
But based on that question, almost looks like you're grouping the two lines together to get to the 500, and if you have to group them together, you wouldn't report either unless individually one of them has 500.
Exactly, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Let me give it another minute.
Sure. good questions.
Yeah.
Balance to page 14.
Yes, we would expect you to balance it to page 14. The information should ultimately balance to page 14. Although the data is at a much more detailed level than page 14, we do ask for the transmittal asks for a summary of the direct written premium and loss data so that we can balance it to page 14.
There's specific legislation that applies.
12, 14.
Yeah.
Yeah, 400, RSA 400A16, and RSA 412.14 have both the authority to ask for the data call and our ability to keep the information confidential and not exposed to right to know.
There's no change in legislation, though, is what they were asking. Like, are you considering a change to?
No, she said thank you.
Oh,
So I
okay.
think
Good.
we answered her
Very
question.
good.
Pending House bill or something like that.
Yeah, I don't believe there's anything pending out there that would change either those two, the protection or the authority, but I'm not aware of everything out there right now.
Yeah.
Go back to Sally's contact info here. URL. All right. It appears that's the end of our questions. Thank you all so much for joining us. And again, as John and Sally said, we're available for questions as they come up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.